So I found some interesting facts about the restoration on the RX7. Let me read them off to you. Residual engine heat can cause premature deterioration of the fuel hose, causing the hose to leak. This condition can cause an engine fire in the engine compartment. Dealers will also install an additional unit for the electrical cooling fan. The fan will then activate after the engine is turned off when the coolant exceeds a specified temperature. The fuel hose will also be replaced with a revised hose. I'm driving the freaking Pontiac Fiero of Mazda. What's up everyone, and welcome to today's video. So update with the FD. I am right now in the middle of doing refreshing the engine wiring harness. I was able to pick up a factory Mazda engine harness, and I picked up a set of silicone vacuum lines. I'm replacing all the rubber vacuum lines that are just corroded and nasty on this car. New high flow white pipe from Petit Racing, and a charge valve to go with it as well. Before I did all this, I was having some drivability issues where the twins are intermittent when they come in. Like sometimes the secondary will kick in, but sometimes it doesn't. So I'm hoping like all this storing, whatever you want to call it, will just fix that issue. But yeah, let me show you guys what I've been working with. Pretty much the top half of the engine is gone. I got rid of the stock factory intercooler, got rid of the alternator that sat right here. Coil packs sit right here as well, so I got rid of that so I can get some more room in identifying like where things go. I'll probably post a picture or video somewhere on the screen of what the factory vacuum diagram looked like, and I'm going to the simplified sequential setup so I can get rid of like half of this nonsense that's in here. Mazda fans and potential Mazda rotary owners, you always hear about rat's nest. This is your rat's nest. Just plumbing nonsense of just awfulness, and a lot of the drivability issue, at least a good 80-90% of it is from here. Like this is the reason why a lot of us Mazda guys have poor drivability issues. Rat's nest is gone. Engine harness, majority of it is pretty much pulled out, so that will be ready to just go into trash here soon. I also found out that my oil fill neck was just trash, so I need to get a new one of those. But so far everything came out pretty well, and if you guys want to see what the rat's nest looks like, there it is. HP SI Import Motorsports. They actually had a kit available for the FD whole vacuum silicone kit. And then I also picked up Ive Performance silicone kit as well, just for in case I needed extra, but I am pretty sure going to be okay with the amount of hose that I got from these guys. Placed all these rubber hoses too, like the coolant hose, the heater, core hoses, just everything. Like I would really hate to take all this stuff off if one of these ended up leaking, or like even the fuel lines for the fuel rail, just replacing everything. I think it's probably a good idea. In order to get the last two sensors on the crank, unfortunately I had to like disconnect the power steering bracket to get this vacuum chamber that was sitting in here out. Kind of inconvenient, but it's what you got to do. So the last part of this harness removal is I got to disconnect it, or at least lift the car up, disconnect the harness on the transmission, and then go on inside the cabin, disconnect it from the ECU. It's really cool to kind of like get really deep into the FD, kind of figure out where all the sensors go, where they're located. What really grinds my gears about, you know, kind of taking over other people's projects is just this stuff, like a JB weld on a wire, just cutting splicing into the harness. Hopefully going back to factory will fix a lot of the issues with the car, but this stuff kind of scares me too, because I more than likely I might have like a drivability issue depending on what they took out that I'm kind of reconnecting. But even here, cutting into the wiring harness for some apparent reason, I don't know, this stuff just drives me absolutely nuts. Let's just hope it turns on. Let's just start there. The old harness, and yeah, we'll get into that. The new harness. So as I was taking this out, just look at this. This is just absolutely insane. Look at all these connectors just cut up. I am so confused like what this is, because if you look on the new harness, This connector goes to your igniter, and then this guy, that's what it was. This guy is blue where it's white on the new harness. So I'm not too sure what previous owner was doing. If they just cut into this and then made like another harness here. This harness was connected here and here, where this connected inside the front harness, these two guys. And this went to the igniter. And then I gotta figure out what this guy was. Like there was a jumper wire that just went to our ground. So again, I am not entirely sure what the hell was going on here with this jumper wire loop thing that test fit the new harness into the ECU and then the front harness, and everything connects. So why is there a little loop harness? Shout out to Full Detail Automotive over on Instagram. When I posted a reel, and so pretty much he said, hey, there's restrictor peels, that's what these guys are called, that go into these actuators on the turbo. So there's one in this line and this line. So he pointed that out, and I was just like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for saving my car before I blew it up. So just be aware, like line that it comes out of, it has to go back in because the orifice for the two are different sizes. So just be aware of that. Oh, he also mentioned that these fuel lines, the normal ones that you get from like, I don't know, Napa or O'Reilly's, wherever you are, make sure that they're rated for the fuel system. Just don't get the generic ones. So he called that out too. So big shout out, big thank you for pointing that out. Owning one of these cars, it's been an adventure, but very challenging. The premise of, I guess you could say, a restoration on this car has been this guy, the vacuum hose. Pretty much is petrified, can't really bend it, and if you do, it just shatters like that. I just found a ton of problems with this car and a lot of maintenance that hasn't been addressed to this car at all. 90% of the problem has been this guy. This is your rat's nest. So pretty much all these lines have been swapped to silicone hoses. These solenoids on the back here, got rid of most of them except for 4 of them. The reasoning behind that is a lot of them stopped working. Since I live here in Washington, this car is old enough to where it doesn't need emissions anymore. So I got rid of all the emission components, put block off plates on it. If anyone's really scared about getting into one of these cars, you know, I highly recommend, like, just do your research. If you're a lucky one to find one with a single turbo, you can get rid of all the rat's nest stuff. Most of those go away. I think there's like maybe 3 or 4 vacuum lines, and you got yourself a single turbo setup. I decided to keep the twins just because I can't afford to go single turbo, but I think I'm gonna make a second video about things that I would have done differently with this car. I think we're approaching 2 years of the car pretty much just sitting in the garage, kind of like everyone says, like a typical RX7, you know, jack stand balling. But we're slowly getting it put back together. Not too long ago, I just put the power steering pump on. It had a massive leak. So I got some new hoses from Atkins Rotary. Stay tuned. Hopefully I can get this thing up and running. Yeah, the motivation is not there. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that can attest to losing motivation. But just trying to pick back up. So earlier in the clip, there was a harness to get put in the car to get the fans to turn on once the car's off. This is the harness that they're talking about. It's like a jumper harness that goes in between the engine harness and the ECU. New OEM harness, they integrated that. And I guess I won't know until I start the car to see if it actually stays running, the fans, once I turn the car off. But previously, when the car did run, the fans would stay on for like another 10 minutes after the car was off. So solenoids you'll need to do the simplified setup. Again, here's your rat's nest, and I'm starting on the fuel line side. So the solenoid you'll need is the pressure regulator controller, turbo controller, and the charge controller, followed by the charge relief controller right there. On my intake manifold, just kind of gave it a little refresh with some new paint. I got rid of all the other sensors except for the intake air temp and then the idle speed control valve. Everything else is blocked off here. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to show this to everyone. I might as well. Rat's nest pretty much on the car. What worked for me the best was color coding areas where the vacuum lines are going to connect to, and then you can't really see the solenoids now, but I got some paint pens and just attached color coded where they're going to go on this loom, where they're going to attach to. And see that, I don't know if you guys can see the ones down there too. What caught my eye, coolant hose back here. And as I was getting everything snugged down, I'm like, man, I'm not too sure if I ever replaced this. I felt like I did, but I am not 100% sure. So I went ahead and I'm just gonna go ahead and replace this guy, because it goes to the rear iron here. If it does end up leaking, I pretty much have to pull the intake manifold off. More than likely, you might have to pull the rat's nest out. I don't want to do that, so since it's kind of like just pre-installed, I'm gonna take this out. I'm gonna replace this guy, because I would hate to come back into here and replace this when I had plenty of opportunity to get to this hose. So I'm waiting for those parts to come in, and I'm also gonna replace the coolant hose on the throttle body as well. So just some preventive maintenance, so I don't have to go back and just do double the work again when I had plenty of opportunity to go in. Probably the best mod you can do on an FD is the fan switch sensor. So on FDs, there's a stamp on here, 108. So that's the, I guess it's 108 Celsius, but that's the temperature the fan, cooling fans will come on. So the best thing you can do is get the FC fan switch and put that in the FD. So where it's located on here is on the water pump housing. So right here. So I ended up getting the FC fan switch sensor and popping that in here. So, and these guys are stamped with 95 Celsius. So pretty much the fans will come on sooner and the car will stay cooler. So little tech tip. So with this stage of the build, I kind of wanted to inform you guys or give you my opinions on, I guess, this restoration build. Doing this twin turbo setup it's honestly been very humbling. So anyone out there that's getting into rotaries, or if they want to keep the twins, I highly recommend doing this setup, just because figure out how this car works. I spent days, weeks on RX7 Club just trying to figure out how a lot of the systems worked on this car, and then just to see what everyone else was experiencing, their turmoil, and then just like shortcuts that they took or things that they could tell somebody else to make this job a little more easier. But yeah, I really enjoyed doing this. Surprisingly, like, my back is shot, so I'm probably going to be hurting tomorrow morning. It's cool to see how the engineers put everything together. Kind of cool to see the similarities too. I think if I were to do this job again, I think I'm not gonna lie, I think I would probably go single turbo to just kind of get rid of a lot of things. But just doing, since I don't have that kind of money yet, doing the twins, keeping the twins, and just kind of doing this is I guess you could say an OEM plus, if you may. But it was very, very eye-opening on how a lot of this stuff worked. I honestly was a little scared that I was going to lose things or forget where things went, which I did, but I'm glad I took a lot of pictures, and I also had plenty of help on the RX7 Club as well. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out. I'll do my best to help out if I can. But this was a complete joy to put together. A lot of time, a lot of money. I think anybody can do this. Like, so don't be afraid to just dig into the car, because there's help out there. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. Oh, let me also say, if I were to do this again, the only thing that I would also, if I were to keep the twins, I would also go with wiring. Wiring Specialties has a FD harness that they build from scratch. I think that harness would have fit a little bit better than the OE harness. The OE harness had everything there. You know, I'd had to go research like what connectors went to what, where the Wiring Specialties has everything written on the connectors on what it, on what it goes to. So we're there. We're finally done with getting all the bad stuff out, putting all new stuff in, and yeah, we're only going up. So yeah, I'm excited.